Good morning and welcome to Cervello Live. Today we're not actually live because I'm recovering from an operation right this second.
Hopefully.
What?
Hopefully you're recovering.
Hopefully I'm recovering from an operation right this second. But we didn't want to miss another Cervello Live, so we are recording this and putting it out live so that you can. So if you do miss us, at least you've got your weekly dose of Cervello Live. Coming up, we've got a really amazing interview with Sharon Broer from Argus, and we'll be talking to Sharon a little bit about her business. But we wanted to share something today that was really important to us. So at Cervello, what we're going to be doing over the next couple of months is launching something called Cervello Protect. And Cassie's going to be heading that up. We're going to be thinking about how we can help families a bit more, protect their families in the event of the work that's happening. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about why we're doing this. So can you help our listeners, watchers, readers understand a little bit more about why we're doing it?
Okay, so for those people who don't know me particularly well and know my background, I've only been working here at Cervello with Chris for the past 6 years.
Only 6 years.
Only
it feels
6
longer,
years.
doesn't it?
Feels like a lot longer. But prior to that, my background is in children and family services for local authority. So I spent a very long time working with new parents, families from very different backgrounds, and supporting them with their child's early education and just supporting them to be happy, healthy families. And that's something that I'm still quite passionate about, is helping families, helping people with young children. So one of the ways that I think I can do that here is by supporting people with their protection. When I was working with families, on thankfully not too many occasions, but there were a few, we had families who'd lost one of the parents. So in particular, I had a young mum who'd lost her husband, who was very young. He was in his early 30s, and we did a lot of work supporting both her and the child's emotional needs, but she struggled because there was no
enough money.
There was no cover in place.
I mean, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think the reality is that when there's a death in the family, money takes a sort of a bit of a back seat because you're coping with everything else.
It does, and it's not something that you want to even think about when you've lost your partner and the parent of your children. You don't, money's not at the forefront of your thinking. It's, what am I going to do to support these kids?
But potentially, if there's not enough, it can be an added stress, can't it?
Yeah, definitely.
And that's the challenge.
Definitely, I think. And that's with the parent that I worked with. That was something. She had to go back into full-time employment. And her child, he was only, I think, when we took him in, when we met them, I think he was only 18 months old.
Yeah.
So she had to, very soon after she'd lost her partner, go straight back to full-time employment. I mean, which she really struggled with.
It's really interesting. One of my drivers, when I'm working with my clients who are typically older, typically built wealth, is to get them to a point where money's not a worry anymore.
Yeah.
Where they know they're going to be okay. But if something really drastic happens to families when they're a lot younger, it's also important to make sure that they've done the right things, they've put the right things in place so that money is the least important thing, and they're not worrying about money every day. They can worry about spending time with their families and doing everything that's important. So that's the reason that we're setting up Cervello Protect, to help clients that we don't actually help as much as we'd like to specifically in the area of making sure that if the worst was to happen to them, they know they're going to be okay.
Yeah.
Anything else that you think? I mean, it's early days in this project, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we're just starting out with it. We're if you are a member of possibly a networking
If you're a member of a
group,
family,
but you know, if you're a member of a networking group and you think there may be some people there who would benefit from talking to us, we're happy to come along, meet with people, just let the people know what we're up to and what we can do to help support them.
yeah.
Please get in touch.
Who's the person that's going to benefit the most out of this? What type of person is going to benefit the most?
Anyone with a young family, someone who's buying their first house,
Okay.
someone who's just had their first child or their second child or their third child
Or their fourth, or their 12th.
Okay. But as your family grows and changes, then those cover needs grow and change as well.
Yeah, I mean, we were saying this morning, weren't we?
Yeah.
That actually, as our business has developed and grew, and our families changed, certainly we need to continue to review our cover on a regular basis, don't we?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that even as professionals we never stop doing, and certainly sometimes we ignore that.
I think people, when you do buy your first house, you take out mortgage protection, and then you just leave it. You go, oh, I've got that. But within 10 years, the value of your property will have changed, and your family within 10 years is likely to have changed.
Yeah.
And the needs of your family will definitely have changed.
100%.
So that just needs to be reviewed quite regularly, just to make sure that it's the right fit for you and your family.
Cool. Good, great. So thank you for that. Hopefully that was really useful. And what we're going to do is now seamlessly start the interview with Sharon. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us on Cervello Live. I really appreciate it. You're on the only ever episode that we're not doing live. Actually, we had one episode before, because as this goes out live, I'm going to be hopefully recuperating from a little operation. So it's Cervello non-live today, but I'm sure that we'll have a really good chat and understand a bit more about your business. So our audience can understand a little bit more about you. Tell us a little bit about you.
So I've done 20 odd years in the accounting industry in various different firms, different sizes, going from a small local firm where I ended up as the practice manager to a top 40 firm, which was a beast of a firm, but brilliant to work with, a fantastic learning curve. And then decided that I really want to work with my clients in my own particular way. Okay. And this is where Argos was born.
And talk to me about, because that's a relatively new journey, isn't it? So tell me a little bit about how Argos came about.
So it is indeed. Argos was born on the 4th of May this year, okay. Mid-COVID.
COVID baby.
A COVID baby, absolutely. Planned beforehand, of course.
Yeah.
So, and it's really come about because of the way I want to work with my clients. I like to have a really close working relationship with my clients. I like to be able to put the time and the investment into that relationship without worrying about, £20 over budget and how are we going to recover that cost. Yeah. It's a particular way that I'm passionate about working with my clients.
Okay.
So Argos came about basically for me as a vehicle to do that.
Yeah. Yeah, to work the way that you want to work, adding value to clients specifically. What have you learned about? And this wasn't a question that I planned to ask you, but what did you learn from all of your years working in different practices in terms of what's done really well and what's done not so well that you're now applying to Argos?
So the bit I loved is the cloud technology. That's come about from, it started relatively early on in my practice years. And I started working with Xero from 2010, 11, if not a little bit before that. I have to go back and remember that far. And that has been a revolution for accounting industry, I believe, because that
and for business,
single ledger.
right? Because it's made business. Certainly, we at Cervello we use Xero, and it's made the time it takes to get good quality information and the time it takes just to reconcile everything a lot quicker.
Absolutely. And it is, for a business owner, I think it completely changes the platform for them. Because if their Xero's up to date, you are bang on top of those numbers. And that's what you need now.
Yeah. And tell us a little bit about what the future looks like for Argo. So new business set up this year. What does the future hold?
So I'm quite optimistic for Argos. I've now got my platforms all in place. So all my insurances, all my licenses, all of that's now safely tick that box, done job. And now we're moving on to really expand and grow. So we've got a lot of marketing coming up. We've got a lot of blog pieces coming up, a lot of e-papers coming up. So it's exciting for me. I'm passionate about it, and I'm very excited for the future.
Tell us what your blog articles are going to be about coming up.
So we've got one on cloud accounting, which is up there. We've got cash flow coming up. We've got anymore when you're working with an accountant, because digital transformation of data now just gives you that open book to work anywhere in the country. In fact, I was recently in a meeting up in Glasgow, as you do. The journey was very pleasant. I did that.
It was just literally from your dining room table to
Glasgow. It was brilliant. And I picked up a client, which is just, that would never have happened, because at the end of the day, I would never have been anywhere in the vicinity of that client. So that opens a whole new platform, I think.
Yeah. You know what? I'm in two minds about the sort of recent situation. I agree with you. Technology allows us to connect, because we've never actually met in person, have we?
No, absolutely. But nonetheless, built a great relationship.
Technology, I think, gives you. Sorry?
I say, nonetheless, we've built a great relationship, I believe.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, I think we've got used to building relationships online, connecting online, getting to know each other online. I still, and this is my two minds bit, I still like and get energy from just engaging with people. So I'm sort of looking forward, and we're sort of doing it now. We've got clients coming into the office, and we're out and about seeing people just a little bit at the moment. So I think if we can take all the good things about the technology, but not lose the fact that we are both in human businesses, aren't we, where you want to see people, I think combining that two works really well. One other question I wanted to ask you again, and it's something that I've just noticed on your amazing background. You've got a little badge that says Armed Forces Covenant. Tell me a little bit about that.
So that's a bit of a personal story. So if I go back many years, I fondly remember my grandmother, and my poor grandmother, what she had to put up with. Honestly, I salute that woman. My dad passed away at a young age. My uncle was in the armed forces and came out of the armed forces. He was a career soldier. Came out of the armed forces at a time when there was a lack of support for soldiers coming out of the forces, or ex-servicemen coming out of the forces, and where they went. And he was like a cannonball, literally. He came out with a cannonball for a head, as she used to put it, and he wreaked havoc through the family, to a point where we went through a phase where I had him in one hospital in St George's in Tooting, my grandmother a hospital in King George's locally, and she was very poorly, and she knew he was in hospital, and she was very keen that somebody kept in touch. So I was scooting between the two hospitals, which is no mean feat if you cover the distance. And I went to see him one day, and he said to me, I've been diagnosed with a brain tumor. He said, but I don't want her to know. Let's just let it be. So I told her, obviously, that I'd seen him, didn't go into the details. And she passed away very shortly after that, not knowing. And she lived with my aunt, my great aunt, her sister, who then came to live with us. And anyway, he phoned one day and she was as deaf as a post, bless her. So all her conversations were on loudspeaker. And he had been such a hurricane through the family. Then he turned around, he said, I've been to the hospital. And she said, oh, good, what did they say? And he turned around, he said, well, they said I'm dying. And she said, oh, good, when? That was the impact that he had had on the family. So my little give back to the world is supporting ex-servicemen now.
Yeah, it's a tough transition, isn't it, for a lot of the ex-service guys coming out in the world. It's people like going on to Civvy Street after you're used to that sort of quite disciplined, structured environment is an interesting challenge, I'd imagine.
It is, and it's such a leap for some people. Others, don't get me wrong, others are absolutely fine with it.
Yeah.
But for him, it really proved a challenge.
Yeah. So what do you do with them? Is that sort of a formal arrangement you've got? Do you?
Yeah, it's a formal covenant that I've signed, which is on their website. So it's a public document. And basically what I've committed to do is to give a discount to ex-servicemen, reservists, or even current servicemen. And from the first year that they've worked with me, 10% of that first year's profits gets donated to a serviceman charity or a service charity of their choice.
Right, good to know. That's amazing work. Thank you for doing that. It's good stuff. Now, it's a weird one because when I was doing some research prior to the interview, one of the things let me show you something just very quickly. So one of the things that we have on our Cervello brochure, it's actually on our first page of our Cervello brochure. I don't know if you can see that, but I'll read it. It says, we sleep better at night knowing that the team at Cervello are managing our wealth and supporting us to achieve our financial goals. So it was really weird when on your website, it said, I know what it says, I want to help business owners with the issues that keep them awake at night. So I'm 100% with you, you want to be getting on with life and having professionals look after other aspects of your life and supporting you with that. But in your experience, what keeps business owners awake at night the most?
So I think the most topical one at the moment is cash flow. Most businesses now, if it's not a challenge, it's a challenge they foresee coming up. And if it's not a challenge that they're having now and they don't foresee coming up, well, then they're a very lucky business because they are very, very mature and have a nice cushion in the bank. But most businesses that I'm working with now are looking to that point. So cash flow, I think, is a big one. Coming from that is up-to-date records, because if your records are not up-to-date, you've got no idea where your debtors are. And your creditors equally important, because if you're not on top of your creditors, your credit rating as a business goes down. So you've got this fine balance. The other thing is understanding the profitability of their businesses. Most people have a vague idea of what their tax bill is, but do they understand the profit behind that? Do they understand where that figure comes from? Yeah. It's something I'm really passionate about teaching my business owners, because then it gives them a better handle on where they're going.
I think you're right as well. I think what we do, and certainly in our respective areas, I find working with our clients a bit of an education process for them. Over time, they learn more about financial independence, well-being, achieving goals, the fact that time is more important than money is a big one for us, making sure that people put that in perspective, but also having control of the numbers, having clarity on where they are, and certainly making sure that they're the case. So you've got a business owner comes to you and says, I am kept awake at night because even though I've got cash in the bank, I might owe a lot of that out anyway, and I don't know whether I'm really clear on where I sit as a business. How can you help them solve some of those particular challenges?
So the first thing I'd always advocate for a business is regular management accounts. So for a business that feels maybe monthly management accounts now, that's too much, then let's start with quarterly. Because even just with quarterly management accounts, as part of that process, we're keeping an eye on your debtors, we're keeping an eye on your creditors. So you see exactly, we're looking at your accruals, your prepayments, and we're building a complete picture for you, as well as deferred income, so income that shouldn't be recognised in this period, and accrued income that should be recognised in this period. So it gives you a current picture, a snapshot of just where your business is. And if we work on that, we can then build on top of that, we can build into cash flow, forecasts, and budgets. So many businesses operate without a budget. So they just spend, spend, spend. But if you ask them what they're spending, or what they're spending on even, many business owners don't know.
And I suppose if it's marketing, what's the end game? You know, if you're spending 10 grand, what return is that going to give you back to make sure that that's validated? I know you mentioned that one of your early blogs is on cloud bookkeeping, and you can find that on the Argos website now, I'd imagine?
Yeah, that's on our website now. That's one of the first ones we put up. So the
Cool.
website's in its infancy. It's only been up a couple of weeks now. And that was the first blog we stuck up there. So more to come.
What's interesting? Yeah. So Cervello, we've been around now for sort of 10 odd years. And I still remember the excitement of starting a new business. You know that? Like, oh, the website's up and like sort of, how's it feel?
It's like having another child, honestly. It has been one emotional journey, but I've been so passionate about the content for the website. And I really wanted the content to as an extension of the brand and really speak to my clients. So it's been a passionate journey.
Gotcha. Understand. Yeah, no, it is. I completely get that. So one of your blogs is about cloud bookkeeping. For the listeners out there who just haven't got a clue what cloud bookkeeping is, help us understand a little bit about that.
So cloud bookkeeping, for me, Xero is one of the 4 leaders in this field. There's others, there's QuickBooks, there's Cashflow, there's Free Agents, there's a host of others. And there's a few that the banks recommend, so Waze, which sounds a bit like the navigation system, but it isn't, it's different. A completely different package. So this gives a business owner the opportunity to raise their invoices at their fingertips. Mostly can be done, so if you just take a plumber, for example, he can come out of a job, sit in his van, pop on his phone, send an invoice. The invoice can have a pay now button in it if that's a feature that he's using, which is encouraging prompt payment. You can send out your statements, reminders can go out, and all of this is done within one powerful tool now. Coupled with that, then you've got bits like Receipt Bank, which I know we're going to touch on. So Receipt Bank just helps the business owner to gather all its information. You've not got to keep track of your piece of paper. You haven't even got to have a shoebox in the corner to keep all the pieces of paper in. Just take a quick picture, 3 clicks, one into the app, one to take a picture, one to upload it. Anything else can be done afterwards, but you're gathering all this information as you go along. You can email invoices in, you can drag and drop them if they're on your desktop. There's just so many easy ways to streamline this process for our business owners.
And that's the important word, isn't it? Streamlining, you know, making it as hassle-free as possible to go through the process. No, 100% with you on that. And yeah, everything's stored. It's called cloud bookkeeping because everything's stored remotely and you can have access as their accountant and work with them together on it.
And it's a single ledger. So I spoke to a potential client the other day who said that his bookkeeper that he's been working with has suggested Sage and that he could send her a backup every quarter. Honestly, I was aghast because who is sending their accountant backups now? Who's even exchanging backups with their bookkeeper?
It should be done automatically.
Out the arc.
Yeah. It should be done automatically. 100%. And one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about, and we've covered it off already, is just having a really clear understanding of what your numbers are. But let's say I've got Xero. I go on my little tab where it says, here's all my reports. But I don't know, I don't know, let's say, for example, I run a plumbing business. What numbers do I need to focus on to really understand how I'm going to drive my business forward?
So there's a few things. That report that you snap on is just a picture in time, effectively. So without your accruals, so accruals is going to be bringing in expenses that you haven't posted onto zero yet, or it could be bringing in income that you haven't invoiced yet, but you've done some of the work or all of the work. Without your prepayment, so splitting and measuring out your payments, so for your insurance, for example, which is normally a one hit a year, you split that across the year, so the cost doesn't hit that 1 month in your P&L and suddenly you've got this big peak in your insurance costs. That comes to your management accounts. From that, you're then looking at your gross margin, you're looking at your net profit, you're looking at your debtors and your creditors, so that you've got a fair idea of who you owe money to, and just as important, who owes you. And you're also looking then at your overheads, because without a really good handle on your overheads and what you're spending on what, so utilities, for example, when was the last time you shopped around to try and bring those costs down?
Yeah, I think a lot of people focus on just getting more money in, and underestimate the power of just looking at where that money's going sometimes.
Absolutely. And outside of that, there's your employees as well, because the employees form a crucial part of this.
Yeah.
It's how happy are your employees?
Yeah, 100%.
What would they say? Would they recommend you as an employer?
Yeah, 100%. I think you're right. Yeah, 100%. And that, I mean, for me, that happy team is all about the future development of the business, isn't it? You know, are they going to help you grow it and achieve what you need to? Now, I know we've spoken about cloud bookkeeping and make like sort of, I know there's been a drive to make tax a bit more digital, and the government have put some rules in this. Help us understand a little bit more about what making tax digital is and what the rules are now.
Okay, so making tax digital is basically an HMR initiative to ensure that they get more information, more accurate information, and they hope more prompt information. So for VAT, making tax digital has now been running about a year. It came in April last year.
So if you're a business paying VAT,
So
you need
only if you're over the VAT threshold at the moment.
Yeah. Okay.
At the moment, it's compulsory MTD registration if you're over the VAT threshold. For those that are under
80,000, is it 85,000?
85,000, yeah. So for those under the VAT threshold, that compulsory registration comes in for April 22.
Okay.
And then there was plans to roll it out for self-employed and self-assessment. That obviously with coronavirus and the other impacts is one of the things that's been impacted. So that's been pushed back now to April 2023.
Okay.
So that will kick in. But the whole point behind this is digital records. So if you're using Xero, you tick that box. If you're using an Excel spreadsheet, but your Excel spreadsheet has to be digital, you can't be manually entering everything. There is then a piece of bridging software that you can submit to HMRC through that. Because you can know, gone are the days where you could log on to HMRC's portal, type your numbers in, maybe have the odd typo and get your numbers back to front. That's just not an option now. So the whole digital transfer of information for HMRC is key. But the point is it gives them access to more information. And slowly, I think this is something they'll use. Basic VAT inquiries, I think they'll do their own little bit of digging. That's just my assumption. This is not being publicised, but that's what I think.
You know what? I think HMRC get that having that information on tax gives them quite a lot of power, right? So if you were running the HMRC, you'd say, how do we get more efficient as a business? And making tax digital is one of the routes. And I think there are a lot of businesses out there who are going to have to move away from that accounts in a paper bag, going to their accountant every year and going, can you sort this for me, to adopting these sort of principles. So yeah, it'd be an interesting transition to make.
I spoke to, funnily enough, an ex-serviceman a few weeks ago, and he said to me, for 5 years I've been working with my accountant, And for 5 years, he's been telling me I really shouldn't keep a box of records. I should process it all. I should get it all out of the way. He said, and for the last 5 years, I've spent 3 days over the Christmas break updating my spreadsheet for my books and records. He said, so what are you going to tell me that's going to make it different? I said, you know, there's no point in my telling you not to do it that way, because clearly for the last 5 years, you haven't listened. So you're not going to listen to that.
Yeah.
I said, but what if I could offer you something that is going to download information from your bank, that you spend a half an hour or a month just analyzing and processing that information, and I give you back your 3 days over Christmas?
Yeah.
And he said, oh, that's a novel approach, isn't it just?
Yeah, I mean, what surprises me, Sharon, is that it is a novel approach for a lot of people because again, do you think that certainly in our world, there's businesses that have really adopted technology and really adopted, the use of systems and processes to make the value we add to clients a lot easier. So to give you an example, all of our clients, when we manage their pensions and investments, get an online login, so there's visibility in terms of what we look after. We use tools similar to you called cash flow, but instead of doing the business accounts, it shows somebody's impact on personal wealth. And I don't think I could do a job that adds as much value as we add without that technology. I could, but it'd just be a longer process to get there. Do you think that there's still a lot of, and I certainly know a lot of financial advisors who still think their job is to manage funds and do all the stuff that doesn't really add any value, as opposed to the strategic stuff where we can really help people? Do you think there's loads of accountants, because I know there's a lot of IFAs, loads of accountants who are so used to the way they've been working for 20, 30, 40 years, they can't transition over? What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I think you're always going to have your old school accountants who have been in business for way, way longer than I have. And they do things the way they always done. Why? Because they always did it that way.
Yeah.
When I first started, one of the key things I used to do was go through paperwork. I started off doing basic VAT returns, and I used to be presented with bags and boxes and bundles of paperwork and used to keying it all into Excel spreadsheets. There was nothing that would automate that process. Now, when the guys start, you're looking for automation so that when you're working with a client, you can do more for that client as opposed to just being a data entry clerk. Yeah. And it's always the question, what more can we do for our clients? What more can we add value? Yeah. Where can we go? And we've got the time to do that now because we don't have to be sitting there keying in data.
Yeah, because it adds no value. It's the strategic element of what we do that adds the most value. I know we've spoken about Receipt Bank, but how much time does it typically save a business owner in your experience?
So it's not just the time saving, it's the grief. So if I'm working on a set of books and I say to my business owner, do you know what? Yesterday or 2 days ago, you had this go through the bank. What was it for? It's fresh in their minds that they're clear on what it was and they can generally quickly pick up the paperwork. If 3 months later, you say to them, 3 months ago, this went through your bank, they've got to rack their brains, they've got to track down paperwork. Why do we do this?
You know what? I've got to be honest though. I'm guilty of that. So I don't. Gazzy does we use Xero, and Gazzy does our bookkeeping. And every now and again, she's looking at me now, Sharon. So I've got to be careful. But every now and again, Gazzy will go, "You spent £27 on this thing, and here's the reference." I'm like, I can't remember. I can't remember. A lot of the stuff that comes out of our business bank account is because I know Xero automatically assigns certain costs, don't they? The regular ones. So a lot of that gets done. But yeah, there's the odd one where I'm guilty of that every now and again. And we think we've got pretty decent control of our numbers, but yeah, I'm guilty. So Receipt Bank makes your life easier. So thank you for that.
And one of the beauties where if you're out, so a tip for you, have the app on your phone. Take a picture, upload it, and then you don't have to think about what you spent the money on. You've got the image.
Good tip. I might remember to do that. I'll see how it goes. Where can people find out a little bit more about you and your business?
So everything's through my website. I've also got a Facebook page just for my sins and a LinkedIn page.
Okay.
I'll get around.
Okay. And what we'll do is when the show goes out live, we'll make sure that all of those are on the show notes, so that if people do want to hear a little bit about you, they can click on the links and go directly to your webpage. Thank you so much for joining us today. I've really enjoyed our chat, Sharon.
Very well. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. And hopefully at home you found it useful too.
So that was Sharon's interview. What did you think?
Yeah, really, really interesting.
You didn't watch it, did you?
No.
We recorded this before we do the interview with Sharon, so hopefully it's going to go well. But I know that Sharon's, you benefit from Sharon's knowledge, and she was clearly an amazing guest. Thanks for watching Cervello Live. Hopefully you really enjoyed that, and I'll be fully recovered, and we'll see you again for an episode next week. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.